Hey there, you're listening to the Pursue Your Spark podcast. I'm your host, Heike Yates. We're here to help you live a healthy, fit, and confident lifestyle with tips, strategies, and interviews. Listen to the most inspiring women and how they dared to live the life they dreamed of and handle roadblocks in their path. Well, hey there. Welcome to the Pursue Your Spark podcast. I'm your host, Heike Yates. Summer is here. Yay! And what's more important than the summer vacation? Summer reading. I've noticed some of my friends already put out lists to gather their reading lists and finding out what other people like to read and what's their top favorite book to read. You know, the cool thing is, back in the days, we didn't have any tablets or phones where we could read from. We had to schlep the books and bring them on vacation. So it's super easy now to download a bunch of books to take with you and read at your own leisure or listen on Audible. That's what I started doing. Instead of reading, because sometimes the sun is too bright, I listen to my books on Audible. Love it. So today's guest has two books that we recommend for your summer reading. So our guest, V.C. Chickering, wrote Nookie Town, a funny, racy romp, and her latest novel is Twisted Family Values, is an unpredictable 50-year, four-generation dysfunctional family romp that untangles small-town privilege, unbridled desire, and one stubborn American taboo. VC writes quick dialogue with wit and insight into family dynamics, sexual longing, and the waning of entitlement. Just the kind of summer fun worth reading and ignoring the kids for, she says. Hey everybody, today's guest is author V.C. Chickering. V.C. has written the novels Twisted Family Values, Dysfunctionally Family Saga, and Nookie Town, a funny, racy romp for St. Martin's Press. She also has written for Bust, Cosmo, and the Washington Post magazine, as well as MTV, Comedy Central, Lifetime, and Oxygen. Her essays have been published in the anthologies The Bust Guide to the New Girl Order and The Girl's Guide to Taking Over the World. So you better hold on to your seats, listener. This should be a juicy and fun interview. Welcome to the show, VC.
Thank you so much, Heike. Thank you.
So glad to have you on the show. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm delighted to be here. I'm feeling good. I had a good night's sleep and the sun is shining.
Fantastic. I am a little plagued by pollen, so I hope I'm not going to sneeze or start coughing. So I apologize ahead of time.
That's all right. I totally get it.
So, VC, tell our listeners who you are, because today we're talking about the importance of fun. That's our topic today, but people don't know who you are unless they read one of your books.
Well, I'm thrilled to be thought of in the same sentence as fun. That makes me really happy. In some ways I'm very typical. I'm like all of your listeners. I was going along with my life, enjoying being a mother, loving being a mother, and working hard at being a good spouse. And the roof caved in on my marriage, as it does with 50% of Americans. And so I was left kind of with this notion, this almost lawlessness in my being. When you think you know how your world is going to unfold, and then the map is sort of tossed out the window, anything could happen.
That's true.
I took that. I did it my fair share. About 2 years I spent curled up on a ball, crying all day long with greasy hair and a sink full of dirty dishes. And then eventually, you pull out of it. You think it's never going to end, and it really does. Like anything else, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And, I pulled out of it, and one of the ways in which I did that was to seek joy.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, what are the little ways, what are the little things I can do to seek joy? One of the things I did was, going through my divorce, was I put a little disco ball, a mirror ball. I hung it from the rear view mirror of my car.
Oh, fun.
Because I love to dance. I love, love, love to dance. It brings me so much joy. It's free. You don't need equipment. You don't need gear.
Uh-huh.
You can even sing to yourself and dance. You almost don't even need music. And so
Yeah.
I put a little disco ball hanging from the rear view of my mirror of my car, so that every time I would get into the car, I would see the disco ball and remember that joy is just as easily accessible as dancing.
True.
And I did a few things. I put a little piece of string, a thread actually, a single piece of thread from a spool, not a fancy thread. It wasn't dipped in wax. It wasn't bought in a store. I grabbed a spool of thread and I tied one single thread around my wrist. And I said to myself, every time I glance at this thread, I'm going to try to think of 3 things I'm grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was so having so, it was such a difficult time. And so I think that also helped me remember, like, okay, where's the joy? Where's the fun? What am I grateful for?
Mm-hmm.
And that will kind of lead me out of this and through this very difficult, because with a lot of things, major life setbacks, you can't go around, you can't go under,
Yeah.
and you can't leap over, you have to go through.
Yeah.
So
You shared with me that before you got into all this mess, waiting to marry the wrong guy for the right reasons, you traveled extensively.
Oh yeah. So I was a kid who loved to travel. I'm a Sagittarius, and we love to travel. And so I spent a year studying in Paris in college, and then I came back from college and I moved to San Francisco, to Los Angeles. 2 years in LA, a year in San Francisco, a summer in Edinburgh, 6 months backpacking through Europe, a year in Paris, a summer in Boston. I've driven back and forth across country 6 times.
Wow.
And I just love being out of my comfort zone. I do not find that anxiety provoking at all. I find it exciting and exhilarating and thrilling. And so I've always seeked that out. And I did a fair amount of writing in college. I wrote musicals and plays in college. And you know where it started? I'll tell you where it started.
Yeah.
I'm old enough that I think my love for writing started with pen pals.
Interesting.
I had pen pals. I wrote letters like crazy when I was a kid. I loved to write letters.
Oh my God, you know what? I totally forgotten that we used to do pen pals before there was email and text.
Yeah.
And what?
I had pen pals far away, and I had pen pals like 3 towns away. Because when you're little, you think 40 minutes away is, forever. And so I would I had summer friends, I would write to them in the winter. I also had diaries, and I filled diaries as a kid. Remember the little diaries with the little locks on the
Little
side?
locks, yes.
Little bitty key. So I filled those up. And I think that informed my love. It was never a labor for me to write. It was always really, really fun.
Where did that need for writing come from?
I think it was, to connect, to communicate. I think I really had fun with language.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an esoteric writer. I'm not highfalutin. I love connecting. I love writing dialogue. I love connecting on a very approachable, very friendly level. So the essays, the books, the plays, the musicals, the songs I've written use a very accessible language, so that everyone can find their way in. I want it to feel fun. Again, back to that word fun. I want it to feel fun. To read my stuff or to hear my songs or to.
Did you write about your travels as well, or back then not so much?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I had journals when I was living in Paris. So not only would I write in my journals, but I would then, I would take like the spent Metro card. They were Metro cards, these little slips, these little rectangular tickets. And I would tape those into my journals, and I would tape candy wrappers. Like if they're like, I always found the names of candy wrappers really funny and out there. And I would tape those into my journal, and I would tape photographs once they came back from being developed. And I taped, I just ads for things like flyers that were, on taped to tacked to boards and things.
Sounds like a mood board to me almost.
It really was Pinterest. 30 years before there was Pinterest, there were my diaries. And I did not shy away from taping. They were bulky and they had funny little bits and pieces of things sticking out of them. Like the cleanliness was not something I ever aspired to. So my diaries, they needed to be kind of wrapped in a loose elastic band, or they needed to be tied with a piece of cord, because they were chock full. It was basically, they were Pinterest. they were Pinterest diary form.
Okay, so everybody who doesn't know about Pinterest, it's like a pinning board with ideas about anything in your life. If you want to know about more fashion or cooking and recipes and exercise, Pinterest is a place where you can literally pin all these ideas virtually, and then go back and sometimes buy them, or just look at things or get ideas for things you might want to do in your life.
Yeah, inspiration, visual inspiration, memory jogging.
Yep.
It's just wonderful. So I think, that was always something I was drawn to. And then I wrote, like I said, I wrote plays in college and music. I wrote a musical, but I was not an English major. And then afterwards, I was always writing. And then I got into marketing. I went into, I had this really great job in San Francisco where I worked for Bill Graham Presents, which was promoting and marketing for rock concerts and comedians, comics.
Okay.
And that was fun. And I made friends with a bunch of comics. And then when I was home for the holidays, I think, at one point, I flew back maybe for a week or two for Christmas, and I bumped into this guy who was the boyfriend of a girlfriend who I met in college. Mm-hmm. And he said, I just got a job at MTV, and boy, you would love it. You would be great at MTV, because it's a combination of all the things that you love, all the things that I think of when I think of you. It's music, it's funny, and it's visually stimulating, and writing. And I think you'd be great at it. I'm going to introduce you to my boss. So he took me in. We went, I guess, the day before I was flying back to San Francisco, and he took me in and to introduce me to his boss. And his boss was walking past us in the hallway, and he stopped him and he said, "Oh, I want to introduce you to my friend Chickering. I want to get her." Oh no, he said, "Yeah, I want you to meet my friend." And the boss, he stuck out his hand and he shook my hand and he said, "Do you work here?" And I answered, I looked him right in the eye and I said, "Not yet."
Funny.
And that I thought was one of the quickest, smartest, cleverest, confident comebacks. Because, usually we all think of the clever thing to say a day later or an hour later.
I wish I'd said, right?
Yeah, I wish I'd said. But boy, right in that moment, I looked at him and I said, "Not yet."
And you did.
And I sent him stuff. I flew back to San Francisco, and I sent him stuff, funny, oddball, weirdo things, so that he would have a sense of my personality and my kookiness and my imagination and creativity. And about 6 or 8 months later, there was a job opening. He said, "There's an opening if you want it." And he said, "You'll be the oldest person in your department." I said, "I don't care. I'll take it." So I drove back across country and I worked at MTV. And then that led to 10 years working in television. And again, I got to flex this confluence of all the things that I hold dear and find very valuable, which is comedy, dialogue, visual stimuli, composition, and music, rhythm. Yeah. And these have all been, this is this refrain in my life. And everything I've ever done.
Yeah. Let's go back to something you shared with me is Singlehood, you said, is an opportunity to seek joy and expressing it through writing. Is this where you created Nookie Town?
Oh my gosh, yes. So you get divorced and you think, I mean, I really was like, wow, I could do anything. I could become an assassin. I could be a long haul trucker. I mean, a ballerina, it's this bizarre crossroads where your whole life your slate has been wiped.
Yep.
And you have to start over. And I knew that joy was a way out. I mean, because it's, again, it's depression and that is so knocking at your door. It's almost like depression has camped out in a sleeping bag at the threshold of your front door.
Oh,
and just waiting for you to open up the door and invite him in. You know, it's so right. The situation is so right. And so I thought, okay, I need to do something that's going to make me laugh, and it's going to make me feel creative. It's going to let me use my creativity, and I wasn't sure what that was yet, but I knew I had to sink myself into some kind of project. So one of the things that happened after this divorce is, when one gets divorced, you still have your friends who are married.
Yep.
And they are still married and they're supporting you as much as they can, even though they don't really understand what you're going through. And then you tend to gravitate and discover a new set of friends. And these are the divorce friends, the divorcees in town.
Yep.
And these women are sort of welcoming you into their coven of debauchery, and they know exactly what you're going through because they've been through it. And so what I learned from this new group of friends is that my experience, my feeling of being incredibly horny was not an anomaly, that it's a very typical, there's got to be some kind of chemical connection, but basically what happens is you are compelled and feel incredibly driven to be desired and to be wanted.
Now, all listeners, if you're divorced, you have to admit that you feel that way, because I definitely felt that way. And VC and I were talking about it before the interview and got to know each other. And I was like, you know what? Couldn't have said it any better. That's exactly how I felt too. So all you divorcees out there, don't be ashamed.
Yeah, you're not alone. So I think it's a compunction to connect. It's a compunction to feel vital, to feel alive, and to feel desired.
Yep.
So we would laugh, all these women are telling these crazy stories, and they have to do with, carpenters and UPS delivery men and all these nutty stories. Really funny. And I'm listening and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And then, because you don't hear this stuff when you're married. And then I would go back and I would have lunch with my married friends, and they would, occasionally there would be sort of a round table where everyone's complaining about having to have sex with their husbands that they've had. This is sort of it's become a routine at this point, 10, 12, 14, 16 years in. So they're looking to offload this labor. So secretly, right? They're thinking, gosh, wouldn't it be great? So what happened is we would sit around the table or the drinks, the cocktails, and everybody goes around the circle. And, one woman talks about, how's everybody doing? Let's catch up. How's everybody doing? Well, there's the lacrosse tournament. And then the next woman talks about the soccer tournament. And the next woman talks about redoing her basement. And then the next lady is talking about her husband's knee surgery. And it's all pretty predictable. And then we got to me, and I would say, everything, it's working out. Like, it's been 2 years since the divorce. It's final. We're in a rhythm. I kind of understand now even though I don't necessarily know where I'm going, I feel settled. And I've accessed joy, and I've got writing, and I've got music, and I've got dancing. I just would really love to be having sex. It would be really great. But I don't want a boyfriend, and I don't want another husband. I just would love that connection, and then kind of out you go. Yep. So I can watch TV and make a ham sandwich and not have you in the house. I just would love that. And then sayonara. So every time I said that, everybody would laugh, and then some woman would say, "Oh my gosh, you should totally have sex with my husband. That would be so great for me." And then another woman would laugh. She would say, "Oh yeah, you should come by. You should have sex with Phil." And then someone else would say, "Yeah, and how about Phil on Wednesday nights, and George on Thursday afternoons?" And I would laugh and say, "Okay, perfect. I'll do Phil every other Wednesday, and George, once a month." And everybody laughed. But of course, nobody meant it. But there was a kernel of something going on, because I made that statement about, I don't know, six or 10 times in the course of a year. And every time I made that statement, somebody in the group, some married wife, came back with, "You should have sex with my husband. That would be so great."
Uh-huh.
So for me, after it happened so many times with different groups, church group, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, racial backgrounds, I thought, there's something going on. I've touched on something, and I'm going to write it. I'm going to be the one to write it. And I'm going to use this as a jumping off point for a book. And so I wrote Nookie Town, which is a fantasy. It's basically science fiction about what happens when a group of married wives subcontract a group of horny divorcees in their town to have sex with their husbands so they don't have to as often. And it's a win-win-win for a while. Everybody's happy.
And then don't give it away, because
I won't give it away. But it goes to hell in a handbasket, obviously. Yeah. And it was a really, really fun thing to write. And it made me feel vital, and it made me feel creative. And I was contributing, and I was alive. I felt really alive. And I used this marvelous book called No Plot, No Problem, which I recommend to everybody who's ever wanted to write a book.
Yeah.
And it's about writing a first draft. You write a first draft in a month. You write 50,000 words.
Okay.
30 days. And the idea is that you write 1,700 words a day to the exclusion of everything else. You get your family on board, kind of the way people get their families on board when they're training a marathon, or they're doing a cleanse, or some sort of a diet. You get everyone in your world is rooting for you. And it's over in a month. And in a month, you have a 50,000 word first draft. And then you put it away for 2 weeks in a drawer. And then you open the drawer and you read it. And you say, all right, what can I work with? What's good? What excites me? And then you do a second draft. And then I, reached out to an agent, and she took me on. Excuse me.
And when I think about, when you get started writing, when you told me about the way to do this, with write so and so many words, and that was to me almost overwhelming, when I thought, oh my God, I'm much better at speaking with people than I'm in writing. You said, oh no, just start it and make it a priority, writing so and so many words a day.
Yeah. So one of the things that I really champion is that I think maybe it's men and women, but certainly women have this ideology implanted. See, I've got the pollen in my. Oh,
now you got my pollen on the information.
I've got your pollen through the computer. I think that we are predisposed to think, not me. That couldn't possibly be me. Mindy Kaling has a book, and the title of her book is Why Not Me? Which I love. Why not me? And so the hubris of thinking, why not me? Why shouldn't I write a novel? I'd written short form. I'd written, for television was sort of 10 to 60 seconds pieces. So I'd done a lot of very short form, and then I'd done essays, 500 to 3,000 word pieces, and I'd written songs. And then I thought, I've never written a novel. Let's go for it. And I think it's giving yourself permission. We need to give ourselves permission to try things. And then what comes with that is a willingness to fail. You have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to say, I tried it and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And there's a real chutzpah and a moxie that comes with that. And at the end of the day, you have to not be preoccupied with what your community, what your friends, what your family thinks of your attempt. You have to know in your heart of hearts that the attempt itself is noble and valuable and important, even if it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
So I wrote the novel. And again, no plot, no problem, extremely helpful. Another book I used was Stephen King's On Writing, which is very popular among writers.
Yeah.
First half is a autobiography, which makes me cry every time I read this one particular section. And then the second half is about your writer's toolbox and what you need. And then another great book is Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird.
Bird by Bird, okay.
Bird by Bird. So those three books are your arsenal. They are your armor. They will fortify you into saying, why not me? I can do this. And so I read those three books, and I wrote a first draft, and then a second draft and a third draft. And then I got an agent. And then I got a book deal, a 2-book deal with St. Martin's Press.
Nice.
And then when Nookie Town came out, there was a bidding war, a Hollywood bidding war.
That is cool. This is gratifying when you write a book and you go, yep, somebody actually wants to read it other than my friends.
Yeah, it was great. And, again, it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
You can't please all the people all of the time. That's an important mantra.
Yeah.
Because not everybody likes Nookie Town. Not all my friends like Nookie Town. I mean, it's the Marx Brothers. It's Monty Python. It's Bette Midler. The people that love these people just love these people. They really, but they're not for everybody. So you have to be okay. You have to make peace with the fact that not everybody is going to connect. Not going to resonate.
So BC, how do you access your creativity and what inspires you to bust out these books and your songs?
So I think I have a deep respect. So it's twofold. It's that feeling of like, why not me, right? Give myself permission. And also the respect that I have for creating content and the value of entertainment, I think goes back to my childhood. I was thinking about this since we last spoke.
Yeah.
And my childhood was rife with entertainment. In my household, comedy was important. We sat down and we watched Flip Wilson and Carol Burnett and the Cher show and Saturday Night Live. I mean, these were important, valuable pursuits and uses of our time. It was important that we read. It was important that we listened to music, and we danced. Dancing was a valuable pursuit. So I think that when you grow up in a family, when if other things take precedence, if sports are more important, or I don't know, academics are more important, or every family has its own sort of gestalt.
Yeah.
And I think there's a place for all of those families. There's a place in the world for all of those families. My family happened to really value entertainment. And we watched black and white movies, and we watched comedies, and we watched, we really watched and soaked up and art. So my father was a painter.
Yeah.
It was, obviously there was paint. There were paintings all over the house, and my father was up in the studio painting, and my sisters were painters and went to art school, and so I think it helped me that I wasn't shirking. I wasn't embarrassed to be creating artistic content. I think it helps. It helps to feel like it's what you're doing is valuable. And so yeah, I just was like, why not me? I'm going to write a novel. What the hell?
Yeah. We're gonna put all these things you mentioned about the resources into the show notes so people can look it up,
Sure.
as well as where they can find your book, so forth.
Yeah.
You're currently on book tour with your latest book, Twisted Family Values. Can you give a little sneak peek, just a little one, so people can kind of go? Because I have a copy and I've been diving into it. And yes, it is a dysfunctional family.
Yes, it is. So what I enjoyed about writing Nookie Town was I enjoyed writing sex to me was a fascinating writer's challenge, because most people have had sex. So how do I write it so that it feels real, it feels honest, it feels accessible and relatable? So if I were to write a book, let's say I wrote a book about 14th century or 15th century whaling. Maybe I've got the century wrong. But let's say a whaling town, let's say Nantucket, and it's, we're talking about whaling, and not everybody who picks up the book is going to know about what spears were used and how the rowing really felt and what the women were doing, because we don't all have that experience, that body of experience.
Right.
However, most people have a body of experience of having sex. So I thought this is a really daring thing to do, to try to write sex scenes that people can connect and resonate with.
And your writing is very real. And when we talked to, we said that here in the States, people don't want to talk about sex. In Europe, it's not a taboo. And so your honesty in the relating a real scenes or real moments is, to me, just super welcoming from a European point of view.
No, I definitely think that the Nookie Town had a very European sensibility, for sure, because it tackles, marital fidelity. It tackles what makes a marriage work. It tackles female friendships, monogamy, and it kind of introduces these non-American ideas.
Yeah.
To what could potentially be successful or more successful than the model that's kind of not working for a lot of people now.
Yeah. So how does it tie into with Twisted Family Values?
So Twisted Family Values. So because I loved, and funny, right? So I wanted to write funny. So I was sick and tired of when I often in books and movies and television, there's one. Let's say there's a group, there's an ensemble. So Nookie Town is ensemble piece with 7 women, right? 7 women in their 40s, over 40, and they're all funny and they're all sexually viable. And the reason why I made them all funny is because all of my friends are funny. Like I don't buy this notion that a group of girlfriends has one funny girl and one shy girl and one smart girl, one adventurous girl. Like to me, that's not my experience. My experience is that my friends are all funny.
Yeah.
We are all adventurous. We are all supportive and wild and out there. We all laugh loudly at jokes.
Mm-hmm.
And we all make the jokes. There's not just one jokester. So that's what I wanted to create for Nookie Town. So with Twisted Family Values, I thought I want to create a niche for myself as a writer where I write funny, racy books. So I thought, well, what's the next funny, racy taboo I can take on? What else is out there that I could build a funny, racy story around? And without giving the book away, what's that?
Don't give it away.
Don't give it away. So I locked into this notion, this idea of a family. And what if we take this concept, this taboo, again, an American taboo that really is going to have to change because more and more immigrants are building and enriching the fabric of our nation and our culture. And they're bringing with them very commonplace situations from their countries and their cultures that are going to have to be faced and accepted eventually. So I thought, what if I take this taboo and I plop it into a well-to-do suburban community?
Mm-hmm.
And how would they manage this? And how would they approach this? And how would they react? I also love the idea of, again, a writer's challenge. So I'm all about challenging myself as a writer. So I liked the idea of starting in 1968. Can I write a novel that starts in 1968, jumps to 77, then to 84, then to 91, then to 2000, and I think it's 2000, ends in 2014. So that was fun for me and challenging. Again, like I want to be challenged. I want my brain to be firing. I do not want to sit back and make it easy on myself.
So this is a little teaser here for the Twisted Family Values. Tell our listeners how they can reach you, VC.
Oh, you mean to find the book?
To find you, to connect with you on social media?
Oh, yeah, of course. So I'm really obsessed with Instagram. I love it. It's a visual medium. It's ripe for comedy, these pithy little comments. So I love Instagram. Please hop on to @VC Chickering is my Instagram. And I talk about, I don't know, anything I find fascinating or funny on Instagram, which I love. I have a Facebook page, VC Chickering. And I have, and my band has its own Facebook page, Tori Erstwhile and the Montes. And that is also funny. So that's fun for me. Again, going back to what's a fun creative outlet and setting short poems or short moments to music was a challenge, and it was really fun. So I'm still doing that as well.
Yeah, I listened to some of the songs on YouTube. Quite impressive.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
I sure did. Now, where can they buy the book, VC?
So the book. So I have links I have an author site.
Okay.
And the author site is www.vcchickering, Chickering. So it's spelled just like it sounds. vcchickering.com. And that's got everything. I mean, that's got links to buy Twisted Family Values. It's got links to songs. It's got links to old stuff and new stuff, and it tells a little bit about my bio. And
Perfect. We'll put all this in the show notes, of course, so you listeners can just grab it and go and dig around and read and start creating on your own, and basically say what VC today said: why not me? And the importance of fun.
Yeah, really, really look for fun. What is the thing that you do where time passes the most quickly? What is that thing? What are you doing? And it could be scrapbooking, it could be hooking rugs, it could be gardening. Like, where is your fun?
So what I want the listeners to do is I want you to respond to this question to us on Instagram by at either Heike Yates or by VC Chickering, and let us know where you spend the most time having fun. We want to know.
Yeah, I think that's great.
We want to know. And we want to get to know you too, you listeners out there, because this was a fantastic interview. It was so much fun.
Oh, it was so much fun.
It was so good to have you on the show. Thanks so much for being here. And I can't wait to keep reading in my Twisted Family Values. And
and remember, there's a big twist on page 28. If you're feeling a little squeamish, just get to page 28. You can handle it.
I can handle it. Awesome. So thanks for being here, VC. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a delight.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
So what do you think? Will these two books go with you? I sure am digging deep into the Twisted Family Values right now. And I'm not telling you on what page I am already, but it is indeed juicy. And we're dealing with a lot of taboos. And VC writes in her typical style of telling the truth. And is very open about everything. So like I said in the podcast, or we said, reach out to us on Instagram at Heike Yates, or for VC on VC Chickering at Instagram, and tell us what you have the most fun with. I hope you have an amazing summer. Check back with us because we'll have episodes through the summer with new guests and new quick tips. Until then, happy reading. Ciao.